Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the sun-scorched heart of ancient Persia, where the sand shimmers like hot glass, and the idea of air conditioning feels like a distant, sweaty dream. You're walking through the edge of the Dashti Kavir Desert, toes sinking into warm dust, skin tingling from the dry heat, and absolutely nothing is offering shade. The sun sits above you like a vengeful deity, and all you can think about is cool air, chilled water, and maybe, just maybe, not melting today. There's no AC unit to hum in the background, no icy lemonade, just the sound of your sandals crunching gravel and the distant wind, so hot it feels like someone opened an oven door. You're already regretting those extra layers you thought would be desert chic. Sorry, but unless you're built like a camel, you probably won't survive this without a clever plan. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. Drop that in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag yourself toward the edge of a village. The buildings rise like clay-colored mirages from the sand. You step closer. Odd towers punctuate the skyline. Tall, hollow spires with slotted vents near the top. You might mistake them for watchtowers or chimneys, but they're neither. These are badgers, windcatchers, and they're about to save your life. In a place where the midday sun can roast bread on flat stone, these people figured out how to channel wind into their homes. Not only that, but they did it quietly, elegantly, and without a single watt of electricity. Genius. Pure, dusty genius. You pass a low mud brick wall. A little boy squats in the shade, letting water trickle from a clay jar into a dish. The water looks ordinary, but it's been kept cool, not by magic, but by centuries of ingenuity. A breeze rolls past. It's faint, but cooler than the outside air. You pause under a nearby arch and let it wash over your face. You could cry from relief, but you don't, because crying takes moisture and you have none left to spare. This is ancient Persia, thousands of years ago, and you just entered a civilization that not only made the desert livable, but actually kind of comfy. The windcatchers aren't just for show. They're precise, built at angles that match the prevailing winds, shaped to suck air in from above and push it down into the home below. Some even use clever little wooden flaps to open or close vents, like natural thermostats. Historians still argue whether these systems evolved purely in Persia or if neighboring regions influenced them. But here, they reached architectural poetry. You stroll further, ducking into a shadowy alleyway, your fingers brushing cool stone. The walls are thick, up to 3 feet in places, designed to trap cold at night and block the sun by day. You hear a fluttering curtain above you. It moves not from your presence, but from a directed draft, a tunnel of air pushed by the windcatcher above. Imagine that, air guided through a home like a polite guest, not barging in, just gliding past your sweat-drenched skin and whispering, "You good?" And yes, now you are. Kind of. Now, picture this. While the ancient Greeks were perfecting columns and the Romans were paving roads, the Persians were figuring out how to turn moving air and water into interior climate control. They weren't just building shelters. They were building comfort. No cords, no plastic fans, no humming compressors. The funny part? You look around, and the people here barely seem impressed. They don't marvel at the windcatchers. They don't clutch their pearls at the sight of passive cooling. For them, this is normal. It's your sweaty, "oh, that's the oddity." A woman walks past you carrying a basket of herbs. She's humming. Her long scarf barely stirs, until she steps near a wind shaft, and it flutters like a leaf. She smiles. You try to smile back, but the salt crusting on your lips says otherwise. At this moment, one very average home in this dusty town is cooler than your entire apartment back home, despite costing about as much as a used bicycle to maintain. And unlike your apartment, it doesn't go ping every time the AC sputters on at 3 a.m. We're just beginning this journey, but already, you've had your first brush with ancient comfort. Your feet are dusty, your shoulders are burned, but something's shifted. That first hint of engineered cool in the middle of a burning world. It's enough to make you believe in human creativity again. And yet, as clever as these windcatchers are, they're only part of the story. To truly understand how ancient Persians chilled their desert homes, you'll need to go deeper. Much deeper. Literally. You step into a courtyard, and suddenly everything changes. The air feels denser here, cooler, calmer. Your shoulders ease without you realizing. No walls hum, no vents buzz. And yet, you're not sweating anymore. What sort of trickery is this? You look around. The courtyard is sunken slightly into the earth, its edges lined with pomegranate trees and the low, steady gurgle of water. A small rectangular pool sits in the center, catching shafts of sunlight and bouncing them off stone tiles in flickering reflections. You inhale. Even the scent is soothing, earthy, damp, like wet clay and jasmine. This isn't magic. This is the ancient Persian house, part aesthetic pleasure, part thermal engineering masterpiece. See, the Persians understood something you might have forgotten. That water doesn't just hydrate or cleanse. It chills. It calms. It changes air itself. The moment you add a pool of water to a walled courtyard and combine it with even the faintest breeze, say, from one of those windcatchers we just walked past, you get something miraculous. Evaporative cooling. The wind sweeps over the surface of the pool, gathers moisture, and dips the temperature as it flows indoors. The walls, meanwhile, shield the inner spaces from direct sunlight, keeping the heat from rebounding around like it does in your modern urban oven of a city. You take a seat on a sun-warmed bench beneath a lattice of vines. A sparrow splashes in the far end of the pool. This might be the most peaceful corner of the empire. And this whole setup? It's standard issue. Historians still debate just how far back these courtyards go, some tracing them to 4,000 years ago, others suggesting they evolved more recently under Achaemenid influence. But one thing is clear. By the time of Darius the Great, this wasn't some elite luxury. Every respectable home, shop, even school might feature one. And yes, that pool isn't just for beauty. You bend down and dip your fingers in. The water is cold. Not fridge cold, but surprisingly fresh for something just sitting there. How? That's where the next marvel kicks in. The underground world of canals. Picture this. Hundreds of miles of carefully sloped underground tunnels, dug with nothing but basic tools, carrying snowmelt and mountain spring water across vast deserts. Persian engineers, let's call them the world's first hydro geeks, learned to dig these slightly sloped passageways from higher elevations to lower cities, letting gravity do the work. And they did this without collapsing tunnels, flooding villages, or roasting in the process. You think your HOA struggles with plumbing? These folks made an entire hydraulic system last for centuries. Some canals still function today. You trace your fingers along the lip of the pool and imagine the journey that water took to get here. Down from a distant mountain, through a tunnel you could barely crawl through, flowing cool and quiet in darkness for miles, only to arrive here and calmly kiss the edge of a courtyard pond. This wasn't just utility, it was philosophy. Water was sacred in Zoroastrian belief, and the idea of wasting or spoiling it was unthinkable. So they made it last, made it meaningful. You lean back, noticing how thick the clay walls around you are. The same principles apply. Keep the sun out, keep the cool in. The builders of this home knew exactly where to place windows, how to shade entrances, and how to create tiny air loops through windcatcher shafts and shaded pools. Even the floors help. Beneath many old homes, clay pots, called sandali jars, were sometimes embedded beneath the floor to store water and help with cooling. The cool water beneath would chill the floor stones, which would then radiate a gentle coolness upward. No, it won't freeze your toes off, but on a 100-degree day, it might be the difference between misery and manageable. You take a slow breath. No need to hurry. You're not just learning about cooling. You're living it. The Persians never thought of these systems as separate gadgets. They were integrated into the way homes were built, lives were lived, meals were cooked. You didn't need to turn on the AC. You just opened the right window, poured a little extra water into the basin, and maybe angled the wind catcher flap to face the north breeze. And here's a quirky little tidbit for you. In some aristocratic homes, servants were tasked with soaking mats or hanging wet cloth across doorways so breezes would pass through them. Instant Cool Zone. DIY air conditioning. Brought to you by Goat Hair and Patience. There's still scholarly disagreement over whether these passive systems were first designed with climate science in mind, or if they were simply beautiful features that proved unexpectedly useful. Maybe both. What's certain is that Persian builders developed one of the earliest, most sustainable cooling systems on the planet, and they did it without ever plugging anything in. You shift slightly on the bench, watching as a cat pads across the courtyard, tail flicking lazily. It settles near the pond, stretches, and closes its eyes. Clearly, this cat has figured life out. And as the air sighs past you once more, cool, floral, ancient, you start to feel like maybe you're figuring it out too. You rise from the courtyard and follow the breeze. Yes, you can feel it now. Not strong, but present. It seems to guide you through a narrow stone corridor, gently sloping downward. The air stays cool as you walk, even though the sun above is blazing. You notice the corridor's walls. Thick mud brick, a little moist to the touch. That's no accident. You're descending into a sardab, a Persian underground summer room. It's dim, and your footsteps echo softly as you move deeper. This space was more than a basement. It was an escape pod from summer itself. Imagine you're living in Yazd or Shiraz. It's 45 degrees Celsius outside, so hot your sandals might melt on the street. But then you step into your sardab, and everything shifts. The temperature drops dramatically, sometimes by as much as 20 degrees. No fans, no ice, just ancient architecture doing what your ceiling fan tries its best to do. Now look up. Above you, a narrow shaft rises all the way to the surface. That's the windcatcher again, but this one is part of a complex vertical system. Air comes down one shaft, cools as it passes over the pool or water jars down here, then rises through another due to pressure differences. A constant, gentle cycle. Some sardabs even had built-in fountains, or small cannet-fed channels trickling through them, cooling through both conduction and evaporation. Basically, your ancient chill lounge came with a spa feature. The fact that you can still find sardabs in old homes today speaks volumes. In some places, entire families would move their daily lives into these subterranean retreats during peak summer months, eating, working, even sleeping underground. A kind of ancient Airbnb, minus the noise complaints. But not all sardabs were created equal. Wealthier homes had them lined with polished stone, mosaic tiles, and intricately carved wooden screens to filter sunlight. Poorer families had simpler mud brick rooms, often sharing one among several households. Still, everyone respected the chill. You run your fingers along the carved wood lattice that filters the dim sunlight into a dance of shadows. The craftsmanship here isn't just for show. Those perforated screens, called mashrabiyah in later Arabic adaptations, let in light without heat and offered airflow without glare. Engineers with a taste for poetry. Here's something wild. Some sardabs were even used to store perishable food. Fruits, dairy, and sometimes even meat could last longer down here. A fridge before fridges, and in areas where ice from mountains could be stored. More on that icy trickery later. These spaces turned into the heart of ancient refrigeration. You lean against the cool wall and listen. It's quiet, peaceful. A cicada buzzes somewhere outside, but down here, it's all muffled. The temperature, the sounds, the pace of life, all slowed. Historians still argue whether sardabs were an intentional invention or the accidental result of digging storage cellars that people realized were just more comfortable. But either way, by the height of the Persian Empire, they were common enough to be considered essential, especially in the arid central plateau where shade and coolness were worth more than gold. Speaking of gold, here's your quirky tidbit. In some cities, sardabs doubled as secure rooms. If you're stashing your family's silver coins, we're better than the one place a burglar doesn't want to visit in summer. A pitch-dark underground labyrinth. You walk further in and find a nook with a small raised platform. A sleeping shelf, built to stay cool through the hottest part of the day. You lie down just for a second. The stone beneath you is cold, not uncomfortably so, but calming. Your body relaxes immediately. No artificial hums. No blue light. Just air, water, clay, and time. In the ancient world, this was innovation. Not by accident, but by listening. To nature. To wind. To stone. You didn't need to control the environment. You needed to understand it. This is the forgotten genius of Persian design. Instead of fighting the heat with technology, they made heat their co-designer. Now, sardabs might not work in every environment. Your coastal city humidity would laugh at this setup. But in dry, desert zones, they're genius. And remember the cannet you traced earlier? Sardabs were often placed right above them. That way, the coolest air, chilled as it passed over the underground water, could flow straight into the room, like duct AC, but made of earth and math. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine what it was like here 1,000 years ago. Maybe there's a grandmother gently fanning herself, a child chasing shadows, someone writing poetry in the stillness. These rooms weren't just practical. They were emotional sanctuaries, too. In today's world of thermostats and smart home apps, it's easy to forget that coolness used to be something earned, built, preserved, cherished. But down here, beneath layers of mud and brick, you can still feel the knowledge of a civilization that mastered their harsh environment. Not by overpowering it, but by flowing with it. The wind shifts above you, stirring faintly through the shaft. You smile. Yep, that's your AC, ancient Persian style. You leave the sardab behind, but its chill lingers in your bones like a quiet secret. The climb back to the surface is slow. As you emerge, blinking into the daylight, the contrast hits you. Hot, bright, relentless. No wonder they practically live down there. You shield your eyes and spot something else rising in the distance. Not the windcatchers this time, but squat, dome-like structures, almost like giant beehives planted in the earth. You're looking at the Yakshul, literally, ice pit. But don't let the name fool you. This wasn't a simple hole filled with snow. This was a technological marvel. The Yakshul is what happens when ancient Persians said, "Hey, you know what would be cool? Ice. In summer." And then actually made it happen. So here's the setup. You walk closer, and the dome grows more impressive. It towers over you, built from a special mortar mix called saruj, a miracle blend of clay, egg whites, lime, ash, and goat hair. It's waterproof, heat-proof, and about as tough as your school principal's mood on Monday morning. Inside the dome, it's cavernous and quiet. The air smells of earth and stone. At the very bottom, a wide, deep pit, the ice chamber. In winter, large slabs of ice were hauled in from nearby mountains or made overnight in shallow pools. These pools were built in long, narrow rectangles beside the Yakshul, shaded and aligned just right to freeze water under the icy night sky. Yeah, nature's own deep freeze. Once frozen, the ice was carefully cut and stacked inside the pit. Sand and straw were packed between layers for insulation. The thick walls and conical shape helped regulate internal temperature, keeping it below freezing well into summer. Basically, a prehistoric freezer that didn't need a plug. And yes, you could store perishables here. Meat, dairy, and especially desserts. Imagine enjoying a cold saffron sorbet in July while everyone else is melting. Talk about empire perks. The most elite households, and sometimes royal courts, had private access to ice during the hottest months. Servants would descend into the icy chamber with padded baskets and bring out the cool bounty like a reverse volcano. Except instead of lava, it erupted with refreshment. Now here's your quirky bit. Ice wasn't just for food. Some ancient texts suggest it was used in medicine to reduce fevers, slow bleeding, or even calm nerves. You stub your toe, and someone says, "Fetch the frost," Persian edition. And it wasn't just one or two Yakshuls, either. Some cities had full-on ice districts, each serving hundreds of households. Local ice management was serious business. Historians still argue whether these ice pits were managed by royal decree or private guilds. But either way, somebody was out there supervising the ancient equivalent of your freezer aisle. Let's get hands-on for a second. You walk around the outer base and find the channel system. Shallow grooves carved into the earth, like veins radiating from the Yakshul. These weren't just for show. They controlled water flow during freezing nights and minimized loss during the melting months. One wrong angle, and goodbye glacier. And remember that saruj mortar we mentioned? Some modern scientists have tried replicating it, and results are impressive. It's nearly impermeable, mold-resistant, and lasts for centuries. There's a reason many Yakshuls are still standing after 1,000 summers. Your local fast food drive-thru roof? Not so much. But as you sit by the dome, here's a thought. Why go to such effort for ice? Because in ancient Persia, luxury was measured not just in gold or jewels, but in the ability to defy nature. Ice in summer wasn't just refreshment. It was a symbol, a flex. You control the seasons now. That's power. And the technology wasn't hoarded. Yachtals were often public assets, serving entire communities during festivals or harvest feasts. Shared coolness, communal chill. You wander back toward the central city path, dust on your sandals, heat climbing again. But you're starting to notice a pattern. Windcatchers, sardabs, yachtals, all tapping into the same three forces. Air, water, earth. They weren't conquering nature. They were collaborating with it. Before you leave, one final detail catches your eye. A faint carving near the dome base. A lion and sun symbol, worn by time. A reminder, even in the fiercest heat, Persia knew how to cool it. You're back in the dusty alleyways of an ancient Persian city. And this time you notice something new. Something barely perceptible, but everywhere. A quiet trickle. A soft gurgle beneath your feet. It's not your imagination. You're walking above the canals, Persia's legendary underground water channels. And no, you're not hallucinating from heat stroke. These tunnels have been silently hydrating empires for over 2.5 millennia. You stop at what looks like a circular stone well. It's one of many that the land like game board pieces, all lined up in an elegant, disappearing curve toward the mountains. You peer down. It's deep. Cool air brushes your face. Down there lies the artery of the city's life, the canal system. Now, here's the basic idea, but stick with it because this is genius. Picture an underground tunnel, hand dug from the base of a mountain slope all the way to where people actually live, sometimes stretching miles beneath the desert. It taps into aquifers and lets gravity do the hard work, guiding water gently downhill to the city. No pumps, no buckets, no desperate rain dances. And the kicker? This water stays cool. It's protected from the sun, from evaporation, from contamination. It's like nature's chilled delivery service, centuries before plumbing and pipes. You descend one of the vertical shafts, careful with your footing. The tunnel's dark, damp, but surprisingly spacious. Water runs beside you in a shallow groove, clear and steady. Above you, shafts connect to the surface every few hundred feet, letting in tiny shafts of light and providing oxygen. These also served as maintenance access points. And yes, that job was about as fun as it sounds. Imagine being a canal digger. It's like Minecraft, but every block wants to crush you. And yet, the craftsmanship is extraordinary. The gradient of these tunnels is measured to centimeter precision. Too steep, and water rushes and erodes. Too flat, and it stagnates. They nailed this slope using simple tools, intuition, and what we can only assume was a superhuman patience threshold. Some canals were dozens of kilometers long. The longest known runs nearly 70 kilometers beneath Iran's harshest deserts. Historians still debate how they kept the angles so perfect over such distances. Maybe string lines and wooden levels. Maybe aliens. Probably not aliens. But you never know. You pause in the tunnel and cup your hand into the water. It's cold, delicious, refreshing in a way your overpriced coconut water never quite manages. This isn't just hydration, it's life-saving design. Whole cities were built around the arrival points of these canals. Markets, mosques, bathhouses, all positioned to make use of that steady, whispering stream. Above ground, the water emerges into open-air canals, feeding irrigation systems and neighborhood pools. It's here that another layer of brilliance kicks in. You pass a small public garden, green, lush, and suspiciously vibrant for such a dry climate. The secret? Canal-fed root irrigation. Instead of spraying water over everything like a clumsy hose party, they directed it right to the roots. Minimal waste. Maximum bloom. You sit under a pomegranate tree, watching the water pool quietly in a sunken stone basin. Nearby, a woman in a long tunic fills clay jugs. Another washes figs a child dips their toes in. The whole city rhythm hums around this water. Every drop part of a larger choreography. Oh, and here's your quirky tidbit. In some desert towns, families owned sections of canals. Water rights were passed down generations, sometimes marked by hourglasses or water clocks, which were used to divide flow time among households. You get the water for 3 fig seconds. I get it for 4 great beats. It was basically HOA rules with ancient Persian flair. And yes, water theft was a thing. Historians still argue about the punishments, but let's just say rerouting your neighbor's flow at night was not a smart life choice. Probably involved fines, social shaming, or being assigned extra can cleaning duty. And nobody wants that. You climb back out of the shaft, blinking again in the desert light. A vendor nearby is selling melon slices, chilled with canned water, and you don't need convincing. The juice dribbles down your chin as you watch others stroll by, dipping handkerchiefs, filling cups, trading gossip beside this timeless river that runs beneath the dust. It's a quiet miracle. No noise, no splashy fountains, no over-engineered nonsense. Just gravity, dirt, and devotion. And the more you look, the more you realize how much the Persian world relied on what it hid underground. Windcatchers in the sky, ice pits in the earth, tunnels in the dark. This wasn't just air conditioning. It was an environmental philosophy. Work with the land. Listen to the desert. Channel, don't conquer. And right now, as the breeze brushes past your face and a bird caws overhead, you start to get it. Ancient Persia didn't just beat the heat. It danced with it. You stand now in the courtyard of a Persian villa, shaded by swaying date palms and framed by sun-bleached columns. It's peaceful here, so quiet you can hear the rustle of a single fig dropping from a branch. But as you look closer, your eyes drift toward the building itself. There, rising from the rooftop like an architectural crown, is a tall, slender tower, open at the top, slatted at the sides. You're looking at a badger, a windcatcher, and you're about to fall headfirst into one of ancient Persia's greatest hits in natural climate control. The idea is so deceptively simple, it feels like a prank on modern HVAC engineers. That tower, it's an air funnel, designed to catch the slightest whisper of wind, no matter how lazy the breeze, and channel it downward into the house below. You might say, come on, a tower can't cool a whole house. And yet, oh yet, it does. Step inside. The air hits you like a sigh. Not cold exactly, but noticeably cooler, smoother. There's a softness to it, a subtle pressure shift as currents swirl from ceiling to floor. The walls breathe. This isn't a trick. This is passive air conditioning, and it's been working flawlessly for over 1,000 years. You tilt your head up and notice how the inside of the badger isn't just a hollow shaft. It's divided into sections, like giant internal vents. Some are sealed off, others left open, depending on which direction the wind is blowing. It's an adjustable system, one part science, one part instinct. Here's the kicker. Even when there's no breeze outside, the badger can still work. Because it's tall and shaded, hot air naturally rises inside it, creating a pressure differential. That draws cooler air up from lower parts of the house, especially if you're lucky enough to have a basement or canted tunnel underneath. It's the stack effect, baby, and it's been doing laps around your ceiling fan for centuries. You descend a few steps into the house's lower chamber. The ceiling curves gently, designed to guide airflow. Small pools of cannet-fed water rest in niches along the walls. And guess what? As air flows over these pools, evaporative cooling kicks in. Now you've got air movement and natural refrigeration. Take that, central air. Historians still argue whether badgers originated in Persia or in Egypt. But it's clear that Persians perfected them, turning climate control into high art. Some mansions had multiple wind catchers of different heights and shapes. Tall rectangular ones for wind from the north, rounded ones for humid southern air. It's like someone mixed meteorology with interior design. And it's not just homes. You walk into a mosque courtyard and crane your neck. There it is again, a badger, rising like a minaret, channeling air for the prayer hall below. Even ancient ice houses, or yakshuls, sometimes had mini wind catchers to keep the melting at bay. No power cords, no clunky vents, just wind, water, and walls. Oh, and here's your weird little fact. Badgers can also work in reverse. On especially dry, dusty days, clever architects would reverse the airflow, pushing hot air up and out while pulling in cooler, filtered air for shaded courtyards. It's like a natural vacuum system that also smells faintly of jasmine and wet clay. You sit cross-legged in the center of the room, closing your eyes. You can hear the wind catcher humming faintly, a low, flute-like whisper from above. Some say the design was inspired by the throats of desert birds, curved to catch breezes even mid-flight. That's probably poetic nonsense. But hey, sometimes poetic nonsense is all we've got. Suddenly, you remember a joke from earlier, the one about crocodile dung sunscreen. Well, here's this section's dose of bedtime humor. Some medieval Persian architects believed that placing buckets of rosewater under windcatchers would scent the entire house. Romantic, right? But also sticky. One traveler wrote that it made him feel like he was sleeping in a perfume bottle full of bees. Still, you can't help but admire the elegance. No thermostat, no emissions. Just use stone, wind, and water. And guess what? Some modern architects are trying to bring this idea back, building eco-skyscrapers with Badger-style vents to cool whole buildings naturally. The past isn't just alive, it's air-conditioned. As the sun dips lower outside, shadows stretch long across the floor tiles. You feel the air shift again as the temperature drops and the Badger recalibrates itself like a living creature. That's the magic of it. It's passive. It's quiet. It works with the world, not against it. And as you stretch your legs and lean back against the wall, it finally hits you. You're sitting in the heart of an ancient green building. Long before carbon footprints, long before climate talks, the Persians were already whispering to the wind and listening carefully to its reply. The evening air grows cooler, but your journey's far from over. You're still deep in ancient Persia, walking the corridors of innovation. This time, you head underground. Yes, again, but not into a tunnel. Into something vast, dark, and oddly chilly for a structure sitting in a desert. You brush your fingers along a curved outer wall, noticing its unusual shape. Domed like a beehive, built from mud bricks that feel like they've never seen rain. And they probably haven't. You've just found a yakshul, literally ice pit, a structure designed to store ice in the desert. You're not hallucinating. It's ancient Persian refrigeration, and yes, it works. The idea sounds like a bad science fair project. Build a giant mud dome, bury a chamber beneath it, pour in some water. Boom, ice all summer. That can't possibly work, right? And yet, it does. You crouch down and slip into a narrow passage leading into the belly of the yakshul. Instantly, the temperature drops. Not just by a few degrees, by a lot. The air here feels like a cave beneath a mountain, not a few steps from the blazing sun. Your breath fogs, and your skin prickles. This place is cold. Here's how the magic happens. In the winter, nearby canals, called canals, remember those? Will be channeled to shallow basins next to the yakshul. Water would freeze overnight thanks to the clear desert skies and low humidity, sometimes helped along by evaporative cooling from the windcatchers or even from the walls themselves. Once the surface turned to ice, workers would break it up, haul it into the underground chamber, and stack it up like winter groceries. The thick, insulated walls, some over 2 meters wide, kept the ice from melting even through the harsh Persian summer. Now here's your quirky tidbit. In addition to storing ice, yakshuls often doubled as dessert vaults. No, really. Wealthy families would stash rosewater-soaked jellies, candied nuts, and frozen yogurt like treats inside. Ancient Persia's version of sneaking down for midnight ice cream. And get this, the dome wasn't just for insulation. Its shape, called a paraboloid, allowed hot air to rise and escape through a small vent at the top, while cold air sank and stayed trapped below. The design is so precise, modern engineers have studied it for space station cooling systems. One NASA paper actually compared the yakshul to an ice-based thermal battery. Imagine being copied by NASA 2,500 years later. But historians still argue whether these ice pits were accessible to everyone or reserved for the elite. Were they communal freezers? Or exclusive chill zones for the highborn only? Some believe village yakshuls served whole communities, especially in oasis towns, while others say they were locked down tighter than grandma's cookie jar. Either way, you're standing in one now, and it's magnificent. Your fingers trail along the packed earth of the inner chamber, where the ice would have glistened like mirrors under torchlight. No mechanical compressors, no fluorocarbons, just thermal mass, clever physics, and a little patience. You hear a faint echo, maybe your own breath, and picture workers hoisting blocks of ice on their shoulders, shuffling barefoot across stone floors. A few might grumble, a few might sneak a taste, One guy probably dropped a block and blamed it on spiritual interference. Every job has that guy. And now, a little joke to chill the vibe. Legend says a court chef once tried to impress a visiting ambassador with a frozen date-stuffed quail egg dish chilled in a yakshul. The ambassador politely took one bite, went pale, and muttered something about preferring his food not to fight back. Can't win them all. But these structures weren't just cold storage. They were symbols of mastery over the brutal environment. They told the world, yes, this is a desert, but we control it now. Kind of like building a swimming pool on the moon, just to prove you can. And as you step back out into the twilight, brushing dust from your sleeves, you realize something else. These weren't solo inventions. The badgers and the yakshuls often worked together. Wind towers funneling cool air into ice houses feeding cool air back into homes. It was a network of climate control, natural and silent, sprawled beneath and above ancient cities. And it makes you wonder, how much of today's smart building tech is just a reboot of ideas from 500 BCE? Now, with Wi-Fi, you glance back at the yakshul one more time, its dome glowing softly in the moonlight. It doesn't beep. It doesn't buzz. It just sits there, cool, confident, eternal. A reminder that even in the harshest conditions, human beings will always find a way to build something beautiful and then use it to chill rosewater jellies. You pull your robe tighter as you step away from the ice dome. The desert night is dry, quiet, and kind. But your path now winds upward, toward rooftops, wind, and sky. You're headed toward something that looks like a castle turret. Except it's hollow, open at the top, and strangely positioned above nearly every home in town. It's a badger, a windcatcher. You've seen it mentioned, but now you're inside the working guts of one. And it's not a tower. It's an air conditioner with no moving parts, pulling fresh, cool air into Persian homes like a silent genie. Here's how it works. The windcatcher has vertical shafts that face the direction of the prevailing breeze. When the wind hits it, the air rushes down into the house. Not just anywhere. It's guided through interior shafts that may even pass over pools of water, cooling it further through evaporation before reaching living spaces. You lift your face toward the open slats above and feel it, a low, constant breeze slipping down like a silk ribbon. The sensation is real. Ancient Persians used this exact setup to survive 100 degrees Fahrenheit summers inside mudbrick homes that felt like modern-day spa lounges. And if there's no wind, no problem. The structure works in reverse. Hot air rises through the shaft and escapes, pulling cooler air in from lower vents. Think of it as passive thermosiphoning, a word you'll never use in public, but secretly love. You run your hands along the walls. They're laced with gypsum plaster, white and smooth, chosen not just for looks, but for its heat-reflecting properties. Some homes even line their wind tunnels with scented plants, basil or mint, to make the air feel fresher. Imagine your modern AC unit doing that. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some palaces use colored cloth flaps or ceramic dampers inside the windcatchers to adjust the airflow direction, basically ancient HVAC controls. Servants would rotate them depending on time of day. A little more east breeze for His Majesty, please. And now the debate. Historians still argue whether these windcatchers were originally Persian inventions or adapted from earlier Mesopotamian towers. Some scholars point to Egyptian air shafts, while others swear that Persians developed the first full climate ecosystem. Windcatchers feeding ice houses, feeding cooled storage rooms, feeding calm mines. You peek through a lattice window into one such room. Walls lined with honeycomb niches, low cushions, water jars sweating in the shade. The kind of place where a merchant counts coins in the cool, where a child naps on a mat without dreaming of sunburn. As you walk rooftop to rooftop, it becomes clear this wasn't a luxury. It was survival art. No fans, no buttons, just understanding how air behaves and designing your home to be friends with it. There's a windcatcher taller than the rest, over 30 meters high, sticking out of a desert estate like a cathedral spire. The taller the tower, the better it can catch wind from higher, cooler levels. Some are even built in X shapes, with multiple openings to grab wind from any direction. You pause to admire the sheer confidence of it. Nature, bent to architecture's will, with a whisper, not a shout. Oh, and here's a fun misfire. One poet once compared the badger to the nose of a curious giant sniffing the heavens for secrets. Romantic? Sure. But let's be honest, it does look like a periscope with sinus issues. You pass a sleeping cat, stretched luxuriously beneath one such tower, clearly benefiting from 1,000 years of architectural wisdom without knowing it. Back in the present, some Persian cities still use these structures, and modern architects have started copying them. Dubai, Masdar City, even NASA's Mars habitat studies have borrowed windcatcher designs. Turns out, solving the problem of how to cool a room without power never gets old, whether you're in Yazd or on a spaceship. And now, as you lie back under the stars and let the breeze wash over you from above, you wonder why we ever stopped using such elegance. Somewhere in all our buzzing, blinking smart homes, we lost the art of listening to the wind. The Persians? They bottled it. You leave the rooftops and descend into the cool, shadowed world beneath, the labyrinth of canals. These underground water channels are like veins pulsing beneath Persian cities, delivering life in places where the desert sun is merciless. While the windcatcher dances above, the canet whispers below, working in tandem with the badger to tame the heat. Picture this: a long, gently sloping tunnel carved deep into the earth, carrying crystal-clear spring water hundreds of meters from distant mountains straight into city homes and fields. The air here is always cooler, moister, a natural oasis. You wander the narrow corridors, feeling the steady drip of water and the earthy scent of damp stone. Canets are an engineering marvel, but they do more than just bring water. As water moves through these tunnels, it cools the air around it. And because canets often open into homes or courtyards, they serve as a sort of ancient air conditioner, cooling rooms with the evaporative chill of flowing water. The walls of canets are often lined with mud and plaster, keeping the temperature steady and the humidity just right. You might chuckle to think that this underground breeze is one of the oldest forms of AC ever, working silently beneath feet while people go about their day above. In fact, some Persian palaces cleverly integrated canets directly into their ventilation system, so water and wind combined forces to keep the summer heat at bay. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some villages, canet workers known as mechanis would descend into the tunnels to clean and maintain them, often using simple tools and lamps. They were the unsung heroes of Persian comfort, often working in darkness and silence, their footsteps muffled by centuries of history. But historians still argue whether the canet system originated solely in Persia or was influenced by earlier techniques from Mesopotamia or even China. Regardless, it's clear that Persians perfected and expanded the idea to a degree unseen anywhere else for centuries. You pause near an opening where cool air rises gently from the canet mouth, mixing with the warm desert breeze. You can almost hear the sigh of relief from those ancient inhabitants, grateful for this miracle beneath the sands. The canet's quiet work complements the windcatcher's graceful dance above, together creating a sustainable, natural climate system long before electricity was a dream. And as you step back into the sun-drenched streets, you realize the brilliance of Persian design lies not in one invention, but in how they weave air, water, and stone into a living, breathing comfort. You find yourself standing on a rooftop of an ancient Persian home, the sun blazing overhead like a relentless overseer. The desert air shimmers with heat, and the stones beneath your feet feel like tiny ovens. Yet, despite this, a gentle, cool breeze brushes your skin, offering a surprising relief. How is this possible, you wonder? The answer lies in a marvel of ancient engineering that combines water, wind, and stone in an elegant dance of physics and architecture. You're about to discover how the Persians invented the world's first air conditioning, and it's far more fascinating than any modern machine. Imagine a tall tower, known as a badger, rising above the house like a silent guardian. This windcatcher is no ordinary chimney. It's carefully designed with openings facing all directions, always eager to capture even the faintest breeze. The air it catches is then funneled down into the building's interior, traveling through narrow shafts built deep into the stonework. The walls of these shafts are cool, thanks to underground water channels called canets running just beneath the surface. These canets are tunnels dug by hand through mountains and deserts, channeling groundwater from distant sources straight to cities and farms. As water flows silently through these underground arteries, it cools the surrounding earth. When the hot air from outside is drawn down the badger, it passes over this cool stone and water, dropping in temperature and gaining a refreshing moisture. The result is a gentle stream of cool air flowing into the living spaces below, providing natural air conditioning thousands of years before the electric fan was even dreamed of. You might be surprised to learn that some badgers had adjustable shutters, allowing inhabitants to control the airflow depending on the season or wind direction. On still days, the system could also work like a giant vacuum, pulling warm air up and out through other vents, creating a continuous cycle of fresh, cool air. It's like nature and design collaborating in perfect harmony, a silent, invisible breeze that makes desert life bearable. Now, here's a quirky detail you won't find in your average history book. In some Persian cities, the canals and badgers were so effective that homes could maintain a steady temperature around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, 64 to 68 Fahrenheit, even during the scorching summer months. That's practically air conditioning without a single watt of electricity. You can almost imagine the grateful sighs of relief from ancient residents as they settled down for an afternoon nap. The cool air soothing their skin, the gentle hum of water nearby, lulling them into relaxation. Historians still argue whether these inventions were primarily driven by necessity or a cultural appreciation for comfort and aesthetics. Some scholars suggest that Persian rulers used these cooling systems not only to improve living conditions, but also to showcase their wealth and technological prowess. Others believe that the need to conserve water and maximize comfort in a harsh desert climate pushed engineers to develop ever more ingenious solutions. But it wasn't just palaces and wealthy homes that benefited from this technology. Entire cities were built around these canal systems, with public baths, markets, and religious buildings incorporating badgers and underground water channels. The bazaar, with its maze of narrow alleys, was often cooled by the gentle flow of water beneath the streets, mixing with the breeze captured by strategically placed windcatchers. Here's a playful thought. Imagine the city's cats lounging lazily on cool stone steps, occasionally flicking their tails in approval as a fresh gust passes by, or merchants arranging their spices and textiles, comforted by the invisible air conditioning whispering through the walls. It's an ancient urban symphony of water, wind, and stone working quietly behind the scenes. The design principles behind these systems are still studied by modern architects interested in sustainable, energy-efficient cooling methods. In fact, some contemporary buildings in hot climates borrow directly from the Persian model, integrating windcatchers and subterranean water channels to reduce reliance on electricity and mechanical air conditioning. You can almost feel the tactile pleasure of running your fingers along the smooth, cool stone walls of a canal tunnel, hearing the soft trickle of water beneath your feet. The scent of moist earth and distant desert flowers mingles with the faint sounds of bustling life above, creating a sensory tapestry that is both soothing and invigorating. So, next time you flip a switch and feel the chill of an air conditioner, remember these ancient marvels, the canals and badgers, that harness the natural world to create comfort and relief in a challenging environment. It's a testament to human creativity and the timeless quest to make life a little easier, a little cooler, in the face of nature's extremes. You step out into the blazing Persian sun, the heat rippling off the dusty earth like a mirage. It's the kind of heat that presses against your skin and seems to soak into your very bones. But just a few feet away, tucked inside homes and palaces, there's a secret: cool air. Not by magic, and certainly not by modern machines, but by the ingenious minds of ancient Persian engineers who mastered the art of harnessing nature itself to make life bearable in this unforgiving climate. Imagine yourself walking through a Persian city in its golden age. The streets bustle with merchants, travelers, and scholars, all moving through spaces cooled by an ancient system that feels surprisingly modern. Towering above the rooftops, you see tall structures with wide vents facing the wind. These are the badgers, or windcatchers. They look almost like giant stone chimneys with open arms stretched toward the sky, patiently waiting to grab every breeze. But these weren't just decorative towers. They were carefully engineered devices designed to funnel cool air into buildings and push hot air out. Visualize how the badger works. When the wind blows, it enters the opening at the top, funneled down a narrow shaft that descends into the living quarters below. The air cools naturally as it moves through these passages, often passing over water or damp surfaces, which causes evaporative cooling, a bit like nature's own air conditioner. The cooled air then fills the rooms, providing relief from the scorching heat outside. If the wind wasn't blowing, the design still allowed for the hot air inside to rise and escape, pulling cooler air down from the shaded courtyard below. It's an elegant balance of physics and architecture. Now, you probably wouldn't survive a Persian summer without appreciating this innovation. But here's a little twist. Some badgers were so cleverly designed that they had multiple openings facing different directions. This meant that no matter which way the wind came from, the tower would capture it. Think of it like having a multi-directional fan that switches on automatically depending on the breeze. This adaptability made badgers remarkably efficient, especially in a place where the wind could be unpredictable. But let's pause and appreciate the materials too. These ancient Persian homes weren't built with steel or concrete, but with thick mud bricks that soaked up heat during the day and released it slowly at night. This thermal mass effect helped keep interiors cool when the sun was at its peak and slightly warm when the desert nights turned chilly. Combined with the badgers, this created a natural, passive cooling system that worked without electricity or moving parts. Historians still debate whether the badger was a purely Persian invention or if it evolved through cultural exchange with neighboring desert civilizations. Some suggest that similar wind towers existed in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, but the Persians certainly perfected the design and integrated it deeply into their architecture. Over time, the idea spread across the Middle East and even influenced the grand palaces and mosques of later Islamic architecture. Now for the quirky side of this story. Some wealthy Persian homeowners decorated their badgers with intricate latticework or painted the interiors with bright colors. This wasn't just for beauty. The lattices diffused the incoming air, creating a gentler breeze, while the colors reflected sunlight and reduced heat absorption. Also, rumor has it that some badgers had small niches where scented oils or herbs were placed, so the incoming air smelled of rose or jasmine. Imagine drifting to sleep on a warm night, cooled by a soft breeze, carrying the scent of a Persian garden. These cooling towers weren't just practical. They were a part of daily life, woven into the social and cultural fabric of Persian cities. Families gathered in shaded courtyards beneath these towers, sharing stories and meals while the badgers quietly worked their magic above. It was a lifestyle that balanced comfort with elegance, technology with nature. Picture yourself reclining on a low divan, the air swirling gently as it moves through the house, and the soft sound of water trickling nearby. The badger's cool breath brushes your skin, a welcome respite from the harsh desert sun. It's almost like being wrapped in a natural air-conditioned cocoon, centuries before the invention of the electric fan. And here's an open question that scholars continue to explore. How did the badger technology influence later architectural innovations beyond Persia? Did the principles of passive cooling inspire early European ventilation techniques? Some argue that the knowledge traveled along the Silk Road, blending with local ideas and slowly evolving into the modern air conditioning concepts we know today. It's easy to overlook such ancient technologies in our modern world of instant comfort, but the Persian badgers stand as a testament to human ingenuity, solving complex problems with simple, elegant solutions. They remind you that before electricity, before compressors and refrigerants, people relied on a deep understanding of their environment to craft spaces that nurtured life even in the toughest conditions. So next time you enjoy a cool breeze on a summer day, remember the ancient Persians who, thousands of years ago, looked up at the wind and decided not to fight it, but to invite it in, shaping stone and air into the world's first air conditioning system. It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the best solutions are those that work with nature, not against it. The morning sun stretches its golden fingers across the Persian landscape, casting long shadows over the bustling bazaars and the ornate architecture of ancient cities. You find yourself wandering through the heart of Yazd, a city that seems almost frozen in time, its adobe walls glowing warmly in the soft light. But what catches your eye isn't just the intricate tile work or the towering minarets. It's the silent guardians of comfort rising above the rooftops. Those elegant badgers, the windcatchers, working tirelessly to cool the air. You pause for a moment on a shaded rooftop terrace, feeling the dry, warm air brush gently against your skin. The heat is relentless, but here, above the noise and dust, you notice how the badgers channel even the faintest breeze into the living spaces below. This is no mere coincidence. It's a result of centuries of experimentation, craftsmanship, and understanding of the desert's rhythms. The Persians mastered the art of passive cooling, a method that didn't rely on any modern machinery, but instead harnessed nature itself. Now, let's dive into how exactly these badgers worked in practice. Picture a tall, rectangular tower with multiple openings facing different directions. These openings catch the wind, no matter which way it's blowing. Inside, narrow vertical shafts guide the air downward, funneling it through subterranean tunnels or over water basins where it cools before entering the house. The air's journey is long and deliberate, each step reducing its temperature until it finally reaches you in the cool, shaded courtyard. This process also relied heavily on the concept of evaporative cooling, which is surprisingly similar to how a modern swamp cooler operates. When hot air passes over or through water, it picks up moisture, and as that moisture evaporates, the air temperature drops. The Persians ingeniously placed water features or wet mats inside or near these towers, amplifying the cooling effect. Imagine the gentle sound of trickling water accompanying the fresh, cool breeze, nature's own air conditioning soundtrack. But the badgers were only one piece of the puzzle. The houses themselves were built using thick mud bricks, a material chosen for its thermal mass. During the blazing hot days, these walls absorbed the heat slowly and then released it gradually after sunset, maintaining a stable and comfortable interior temperature. These architectural choices turned homes into natural refrigerators of sorts, where the heat of the day was held at bay and the cooler night air was invited in carefully. Historians still argue whether the design of the badger evolved independently or was inspired by similar structures in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Some suggest a shared architectural lineage across these early desert civilizations, each adapting and refining the idea to suit their unique climates and cultural needs. The exact origins remain a fascinating mystery, but there's no doubt that the Persians perfected the windcatcher into an art form. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some badgers were so tall and intricately designed that they doubled as status symbols for wealthy families. They weren't just practical, they were statements of prestige. In Yazd, certain mansions boast windcatchers adorned with colorful mosaics and geometric patterns, turning these functional towers into works of art that caught not only the wind, but also the admiration of neighbors. Imagine being a visitor in such a house. You step inside the cool, darkened rooms, away from the harsh sun, and feel the relief as the air wraps around you like a soft blanket. The windcatcher hums quietly above, unseen but deeply felt. There might even be a hint of rosewater or saffron in the air, released from nearby gardens or inside the house itself, adding a delicate fragrance to the experience. These cooling systems also had a social side. The courtyards beneath the badgers were spaces for gathering, storytelling, and enjoying meals in comfort. Families would spend long afternoons and evenings here, shielded from the heat but connected to the outdoors. This blending of architecture, nature, and social life created a unique rhythm, one that shaped the Persian way of living for centuries. One ongoing debate among scholars is how the knowledge of badger technology influenced later Islamic architecture, and whether it contributed to the design of famous structures like the Alhambra in Spain or the Great Mosque of Isfahan. Some experts believe that the principles behind the badger traveled across continents via trade routes, inspiring innovations in climate control in faraway lands. Others argue that these were parallel developments born from similar environmental challenges. Another fascinating aspect is how the badger fits into a broader tradition of Persian water management and environmental engineering. The ancient canal system, underground tunnels that transported water from mountains to cities, worked hand in hand with the cooling towers. By supplying cool water near or beneath the homes, the canals not only quenched thirst but also enhanced the cooling process. You can almost see how these technologies formed a harmonious ecosystem designed to tame the harsh desert climate. Imagine the ingenuity required to maintain these structures. Workers had to keep the water flowing, clean the air channels, and repair the delicate latticework that sometimes adorned the towers. These wind catchers were living systems, requiring care and attention, much like a garden or a delicate piece of machinery. So next time you enjoy a breeze on a warm day, or listen to the gentle hum of a fan, remember the ancient Persians. They created something elegant and sustainable, a symphony of wind, water, and stone that brought relief to millions. Their wind catchers are silent monuments to a time when human creativity found a perfect dance partner in nature. As the sun climbs higher, spilling its harsh heat over the endless sands and stone of Persia, you find yourself wandering through a bustling marketplace, filled with the scents of exotic spices and freshly baked bread. But amid this sensory feast, your attention drifts to something quieter, almost invisible to the untrained eye: the ingenious cooling strategies hidden in plain sight throughout the city. It's time to explore how the ancient Persians extended their mastery of climate control beyond wind catchers to the very fabric of their daily lives, turning homes, gardens, and even public baths into oases of comfort in a desert world. Imagine stepping inside a typical Persian home. Thick, sun-baked mud bricks form walls so solid they seem to drink in the heat of the day, releasing it only slowly when the cool night arrives. These walls, often a meter thick or more, were an early form of thermal regulation, keeping interiors pleasantly cool when the world outside felt like a furnace. You can almost hear the muffled bustle of life inside, muffled by these earthen guardians. But walls alone weren't enough. The Persians developed the shabstan, an underground chamber that served as a retreat during the hottest hours. Picture descending a few steps into this cool, shadowed room where the air feels like a gentle caress. Sometimes these spaces were cooled further by channels of flowing water beneath the floors, an ancient version of radiant cooling, creating a sanctuary that combined architecture with hydrology. Historians still debate whether these underground spaces were originally inspired by Zoroastrian traditions or practical necessity, but either way, they became central to Persian domestic comfort. Outside, the courtyard was the beating heart of the household. These open-air spaces, often lush with trees, fragrant flowers, and reflecting pools, offered shade and a natural coolness that contrasted sharply with the relentless sun beyond the walls. The interplay of water and greenery wasn't just aesthetic, it was essential. The evaporation from the pools and the shade from the foliage worked in tandem, lowering the temperature and softening the dry air. You might catch a glimpse of children splashing in shallow basins, or hear the soft chatter of families enjoying tea under woven canopies. This harmonious relationship with nature was no accident. Persian gardens, known as paradises, were meticulously designed to balance beauty with function. Their fourfold layout, inspired by the ancient canal irrigation system, ensured that water flowed evenly, feeding both plants and cooling features alike. The trickling sounds of fountains and streams weren't mere decoration. They played a vital role in calming the mind and cooling the air. In fact, some scholars suggest these gardens were early prototypes of microclimates, carefully engineered environments that predate modern air conditioning by millennia. One fascinating, less-known detail is the use of special building materials with insulating properties. The Persians mixed straw and clay to create bricks that trapped air pockets, improving insulation. This simple yet effective technique helped maintain consistent temperatures inside, preventing the scorching heat from penetrating too deeply. It's a reminder that sometimes the best technology is the one you hardly notice. Public baths, or hammams, also serve as communal cool zones, where people gathered not just for hygiene, but for socializing and relaxation. These baths were marvels of architectural ingenuity, designed to maintain a steady temperature and humidity balance. Cold plunge pools, steam rooms, and shaded terraces combined to offer a sensory experience that soothed both body and soul. The baths were often built near water sources and used clever ventilation to keep the air fresh and cool, a tradition that influenced bathhouse designs for centuries afterward. But not all innovations were built from stone or brick. The The Persians also mastered the art of textile cooling. Delicate, breathable fabrics like fine cotton and silk were commonly used in clothing and curtains to allow air to circulate while providing shade from the sun. In fact, some wealthy households employed hanging curtains soaked in scented water near windows or doorways, creating a refreshing, fragrant breeze when stirred by the wind. You can almost imagine the gentle rustle of these curtains in the warm air, a soft whisper of comfort. An amusing anecdote tells of Persian poets who likened the cooling effect of their gardens to the touch of a beloved's hand. Delicate, refreshing, and utterly soothing. It shows how deeply intertwined climate comfort was with the culture, art, and daily life of ancient Persia. Historians still argue about how much of these practices spread through trade and conquest versus local innovation, but the legacy is undeniable. Speaking of trade, the Silk Road didn't just ferry spices and silks. It carried ideas and technologies too. Cooling techniques traveled alongside merchants and travelers, influencing architecture as far as China and the Mediterranean. Some scholars posit that the famed Roman hypocaust system, an early form of underfloor heating, was complemented by knowledge of Persian cooling strategies in certain regions, creating a fascinating cross-pollination of climate control methods. Despite all this ingenuity, the Persian approach to cooling was remarkably sustainable. Unlike today's energy-hungry air conditioners, these methods relied on passive design, local materials, and the environment itself. It's a gentle reminder that sometimes the best solutions are those that work in harmony with nature rather than against it. As you sit in the cool shade of a courtyard garden, watching sunlight dance through leaves onto the shimmering pool below, you realize how the ancient Persians' deep understanding of their environment created not just relief from heat, but spaces of peace and beauty. Their cooling inventions weren't merely technical feats. They were part of a broader philosophy that cherished comfort, community, and connection to the natural world. And here's a quirky thought to drift off on. Next time you feel warm, imagine how a simple breeze through a badger or the cool whisper of water beneath your feet could transform your day. It's a legacy of ingenuity that still inspires, centuries after the last brick was laid. The journey of Persian cooling innovations doesn't end with private homes and gardens. It reaches into the very fabric of city planning and public life, shaping entire communities to embrace comfort amid the harsh desert climate. Imagine yourself strolling through a sprawling Persian city like Persepolis or Yazd, where every street, every building, and even the layout of neighborhoods reflects a deep, thoughtful understanding of how to tame the relentless heat. City planners, or the architects of old, designed narrow, winding alleys that snake through densely packed buildings, casting long shadows to shield residents from the midday sun. You can almost hear the soft echo of footsteps as you walk beneath these shaded corridors, where the air feels cooler simply because the sun has less space to reach the ground. This wasn't accidental. It was an early form of urban climate control, a way to turn whole cities into living air conditioners. Historians still debate how much these designs were influenced by cultural factors versus sheer practicality, but the effect is undeniable, a cooler, calmer pace of life carved into the very stones. The buildings themselves often rose tall with thick walls, but what truly set Persian cities apart was the integration of windcatchers, or badgers, on a citywide scale. Picture these towering vents crowning homes and public buildings, catching the faintest breeze and funneling it down into shaded rooms. The badgers could catch wind from any direction and direct it downward, pushing stale, warm air out and inviting cool air in. It's a simple principle, but the execution required careful craftsmanship and deep knowledge of local wind patterns. In some cities, these wind catchers were so numerous that entire neighborhoods hummed with the gentle sound of moving air, creating a natural white noise that calmed nerves and helped people sleep. No electric fans required. This is where architecture and atmosphere blended seamlessly, a true marriage of form and function that still fascinates scholars and engineers today. Water played a crucial role in these urban cooling systems too. Persian cities often incorporated canals, underground aqueducts that brought cool mountain water through tunnels into the city center. Imagine the surprise of feeling a sudden, cool breeze on a hot day and realizing it's the result of this hidden water system circulating beneath your feet. Fountains and pools scattered throughout marketplaces and squares not only provided beauty and refreshment, but contributed actively to lowering the temperature through evaporation. The gentle sound of trickling water added to the ambience, a sensory balm for the weary and overheated. The way these elements, shade, wind, water, worked together was nothing short of genius. Courtyards opened to sky, but were sheltered by thick walls and covered walkways. Narrow streets blocked harsh sunlight, but allowed cooling breezes to pass through. It's a delicate balance, as if the city itself breathed with the rhythms of nature, slowing down to a comfortable pulse even under the blazing sun. The social aspects of this design are just as fascinating. Public spaces were not just cool refuges, but hubs of community life. People gathered under pergolas and near fountains to share stories, conduct business, or simply rest. The cooling environment fostered social connection, reinforcing the idea that comfort and community go hand in hand. You might even catch a whispered joke among friends about how they'd gladly trade their wool robes for the light fabrics hanging in the market, or how the Badgers were better listeners than some family members, quiet, reliable, and always blowing just the right breeze. Another surprising feature of Persian urban design was the use of reflective surfaces to reduce heat. Light-colored plaster and polished tiles covered many buildings, bouncing the harsh sunlight away rather than absorbing it. Some palaces even featured pools and tiled walls designed to amplify this effect, creating shimmering, cooling light shows that dazzled visitors while easing the heat. Scholars still argue about how intentional these aesthetic choices were versus practical necessity, but the results are undeniably beautiful and effective. As you wander through these cool, shadowed streets, you might stumble upon a caravanserai, a roadside inn for travelers, where weary merchants found shelter and refreshment. These structures were thoughtfully designed with thick walls, shaded courtyards, and often their own windcatchers and water features. The comfort provided wasn't just physical, but psychological. In a harsh desert environment, such places offered a reassuring pause, a promise that relief was always nearby. One lesser-known fact is that some Persian cooling techniques inspired later architectural styles far beyond their borders. The famous Alhambra in Spain, for example, incorporates many cooling features that trace their roots back to Persian and broader Islamic design traditions. It's a reminder of how these ancient innovations didn't remain isolated but traveled with traders, scholars, and conquerors, spreading knowledge and comfort across continents. Of course, not all cooling solutions were perfect. Some historians note that urban density sometimes created pockets of trapped heat, known as urban heat islands, even in ancient cities. But the Persian approach was always about balance, adapting and experimenting to find the best fit for their environment. It's a lesson in humility and persistence, a reminder that even the best ideas require constant refinement. Imagine now the twilight hours, when the day's heat fades but the cool air lingers, gently stirred by the badgers and scented by jasmine from nearby gardens. The city slows, lights flicker, and the gentle sounds of water and wind create a lullaby for the night. You might smile, knowing that the ancient Persians engineered not just buildings but entire lifestyles designed to invite rest and peace amid a challenging climate. This harmony between environment, architecture, and daily life remains an inspiring legacy. It shows that comfort isn't just about technology or wealth, but about observing the world, understanding natural rhythms, and designing thoughtfully around them. The Persian cities were not only marvels of engineering, but also places of refuge and rejuvenation, crafted with a quiet sophistication that still echoes softly across time. And here's a gentle thought to carry you towards sleep. Sometimes, the most profound comfort comes not from machines or gadgets, but from simple, natural designs, narrow alleys, cool water, and a breeze that knows exactly where to flow. As the story of Persian cooling innovations draws to a close, it's worth lingering a bit longer on the lasting impact of these ancient technologies, not just on the climate control front, but on how they shape the very way people experience daily life, comfort, and community. You find yourself imagining the slow, deliberate rhythms of life in these sun-baked lands, where every breeze, every shadow, and every drop of water was a small, carefully considered gift. The ancient Persians weren't just inventors. They were artists of comfort, crafting experiences that helped people live well despite the extremes of their environment. One of the most fascinating legacies of Persian air conditioning is how its principles quietly influenced architecture far beyond Persia's borders. From the winding alleys of North African Medinas to the ornate palaces of Andalusia, you can trace the subtle fingerprints of Persian design thinking. Windcatchers, canals, and shaded courtyards became common features in many parts of the Islamic world and beyond, traveling along trade routes like silk threads weaving through cultures. It's a reminder that innovation is rarely isolated. Ideas travel, transform, and take root in unexpected places, often carried by the hands of merchants, builders, and curious travelers. In modern times, the resurgence of interest in sustainable and passive cooling methods has led architects and engineers to look back at these ancient techniques with renewed admiration. You might picture a contemporary cityscape where tall buildings were wind catchers again, or where underground water channels quietly cool neighborhoods without using electricity. Historians still argue how much of this ancient wisdom was lost and then rediscovered. But there's no doubt that these early Persian inventions remain surprisingly relevant today. But beyond technology, the Persian approach teaches something quieter and perhaps more profound: how to live in harmony with nature's challenges rather than fighting them. Instead of battling the desert sun with brute force or relentless energy consumption, they worked with the land's natural rhythms, inviting the breeze, celebrating shade, and embracing water's cooling touch. This mindset, almost poetic in its simplicity, encourages us today to pause and rethink our own modern relationship with the environment. You also realize that these innovations affected daily rituals and social customs in ways you might not expect. Cooling spaces became gathering places where stories were shared, deals struck, and friendships formed. The gentle murmur of water and the soft sigh of wind catchers provided a calming soundtrack to everyday life, helping people relax and recharge. In some ways, these cooling designs help create a culture of leisure and reflection, making room for the human need to rest and connect. A quirky detail worth picturing: some Persian palaces and gardens even used fragrant plants near water features to cool the air while filling it with subtle scents like rose, jasmine, or mint. Imagine a warm evening where the breeze carries both coolness and a hint of perfume, turning the simple act of sitting outside into a sensory delight. Historians debate how widespread these fragrant cooling gardens really were, but the idea itself captures the Persian flair for combining utility with beauty. By now, you might be feeling the gentle pull of sleep, carried along by the whisper of ancient winds and the soft splash of imaginary fountains. It's a fitting end to our journey, reminding us that history isn't just about dates and events, but about the lived experience of people who shaped the world in small but meaningful ways. So, as you drift off, think of the Persian architects who looked at a hot, harsh desert and imagined a cooler, more comfortable world, not by fighting the sun, but by dancing with the breeze. Their legacy, quietly etched into stones and water channels, invites us to do the same in our lives. And remember, the next time you enjoy a cool breeze or the comforting hum of a fan, you're touching a thread in a long, winding story that started thousands of years ago in the ancient Persian world. Now, as the story settles softly into the quiet corners of your mind, imagine the gentle desert breeze slipping through a lattice window, cooling the warm stones of an ancient Persian home. The rhythmic drip of water from a hidden channel, the faint scent of blooming jasmine carried on that air, all weaving together a tranquil lullaby from a time long past. There is a certain calm in knowing how people centuries ago sought comfort not through complex machines or loud gadgets, but through thoughtful design, patience, and a deep respect for nature's rhythms. Their inventions remind us to breathe slower, to appreciate the simple gifts of shade, breeze, and flowing water. They invite you to imagine yourself reclining in a cool courtyard, cradled by shadows and the soft murmur of fountains, letting the day's heat gently dissolve into the coolness of evening. As you let your thoughts drift further, let go of the rush and noise of modern life. Feel the timelessness of the moment, where human ingenuity meets the natural world in quiet harmony. No hurry, no clamor, just the soft hum of history unfolding like a whisper. So, close your eyes, breathe in the memory of that ancient coolness, and let it cradle you into peaceful rest. May your dreams carry you through starlit Persian nights, where the world's first air conditioning still hums softly in the background, guiding you gently toward a calm and restful sleep. Good night and sweet dreams.